The manila envelope sat on my desk like a ticking bomb. No return address, just my name, Lila Davenport, typed in clean, impersonal letters. I'd been staring at it for 20 minutes, coffee growing cold beside my keyboard, while my coworkers bustled around the office, starting their day. My name is Lila, and until that envelope arrived, I thought I knew exactly who I was and where my life was headed. Funny how paper can be heavier than stone when it carries the right kind of truth. Everything okay? Ben from accounting stopped by my cubicle, concern etched on his face. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine. I lied, sliding the envelope under a stack of reports. Just reviewing some quarterly numbers. He lingered a moment too long, like he wanted to say more, then nodded and walked away. I waited until his footsteps faded before pulling the envelope back out. My hands trembled as I finally broke the seal. The photos spilled onto my desk like autumn leaves, each one more devastating than the last. My husband Ethan, his arms wrapped around a woman I'd never seen before. Their faces close, intimate. His hand on her waist in front of a hotel I recognized downtown. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, when he told me he was working late on a big client presentation. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Don't forget, parent-teacher conference for Iris at 3:30 today. I stared at his message, at this mundane reminder of our normal life, while the evidence of his betrayal lay scattered across my desk. Our daughter Iris, 12 years old and already too perceptive for her own good, had mentioned lately that Daddy seemed different. I dismissed her concerns, told her he was just busy with work. The office phone rang, startling me. My mother's nursing home. Mrs. Davenport? Your mother had a difficult night. The doctor would like to discuss adjusting her medication. I jotted down notes mechanically, my eyes fixed on one particular photo where Ethan was kissing this mystery woman's neck, his wedding ring clearly visible. The same ring I'd slipped on his finger 13 years ago, promising forever. I'll stop by this evening, I told the nurse, hanging up. My mother, bedridden after her stroke, needed me. Iris needed me. And Ethan needed to explain himself. I gathered the photos, tucking them back into the envelope with steady hands. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder, more calculated. Whoever sent these photos had given me a gift, the truth. Now I had to decide what to do with it. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, love you. See you at home tonight. I picked up my coffee, took a sip of the bitter cold liquid, and started planning my next move. Because one thing was certain, our home would never be the same after tonight. The parent-teacher conference felt like an out-of-body experience. I sat next to Ethan, watching him charm Iris's teacher with that easy smile of his, while my manila envelope of secrets burned a hole in my purse. His hand rested casually on my knee, a gesture that used to comfort me, but now made my skin crawl. Iris seems more withdrawn lately, Mrs. Peterson said, adjusting her glasses. Her last few assignments have been concerning. She slid a paper across her desk. It was an essay titled My Family, illustrated with crayon drawings. The stick figures of our family stood far apart on the page, dark scribbles filling the spaces between us. My throat tightened. She's probably just going through a phase, Ethan said quickly. Work's been busy, but I'll make more time. You've been saying that for months. I cut in, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. Mrs. Peterson's eyebrows shot up, and Ethan's hand tensed on my knee. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. Outside, the autumn wind whipped around us as we walked to our separate cars. I'll pick up dinner, Ethan said, checking his phone. Chinese okay? Actually, I need to visit Mom. I didn't look at him. The nursing home called. They're adjusting her medication again. Tonight? Can it wait until? No, it can't wait. I got into my car before he could respond. At the nursing home, I found Mom asleep, her face peaceful despite the machines monitoring her vital signs. Nurse Carla was adjusting her for when I walked in. She had a rough day, Carla said softly. But she asked for you. I sank into the chair beside Mom's bed, taking her frail hand in mine. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, I saw recognition there, a flash of the sharp, vibrant woman she used to be before the stroke. "Mom," I whispered. "I don't know what to do." She squeezed my hand weakly, her eyes searching my face. Even now, she could read me like a book. A tear slid down her cheek, and I quickly wiped it away. "Mrs. Davenport." Carla hesitated by the door. "The doctor mentioned possibly moving your mother to the intensive care unit. Her condition." My phone buzzed. "Ethan, where are you?" "Iris is asking about dinner." Another buzz. A text from Ben. "Hope you're holding up okay. Here if you need to talk." Mom's monitor beeped steadily, marking time like a metronome. I thought about Iris's drawing, those dark scribbles between our family members growing wider by the day. About the photos in my purse, evidence of Ethan's other life. About the mounting medical bills and the weight of all these responsibilities crushing me. Mom's fingers twitched in mine, and I looked down to find her trying to form words. "St. strong," she managed, her voice barely audible. "I know, Mom," I said, squeezing her hand. "I have to be strong." But as I sat there, watching the sunset paint shadows across her hospital room, I wondered how much longer I could keep pretending everything was fine. Something had to break, and I was terrified it would be me. I found her at Café Luna, exactly where the anonymous tip said she'd be. Marissa Blake sat alone at an outdoor table, absently stirring her coffee, while scrolling through her phone. She was younger than she looked in the photos, probably late 20s, with a kind of effortless beauty that made my stomach twist. I hadn't planned to confront her. I told myself I was just gathering information, trying to understand. But when she looked up and our eyes met, something inside me snapped. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, already pulling out the chair across from her. Her perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her cup. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "I'm Ethan Davenport's wife." The words tasted like acid in my mouth. The color drained from her face. She glanced at her phone, then back at me. "Listen, I can explain." "Can you?" I pulled out the photos, laying them on the table between us like cards in a losing hand. "Because I'd love to hear how you explain these." A young couple at the next table looked over curiously. Marissa leaned forward, lowering her voice. "This isn't what you think. Ethan and I. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make her flinch. "My 12-year-old daughter is drawing pictures of our family falling apart. My mother is dying in a nursing home. That's complicated. This." I gestured to the photos. "This is just selfish." "He told me you were separated," she whispered. "That you were staying together for your daughter, but the marriage was over." The world tilted sideways for a moment. Through the cafe window, I caught my reflection, a woman I barely recognized, pale and trembling with rage. "When did he tell you that?" My voice sounded distant, even to myself. 6 months ago, when we first." She stopped, watching my face crumple. "Oh God, you didn't know? He said you'd agreed to see other people." My phone buzzed. "Ethan, working late again. Don't wait up." 6 months. While I'd been juggling hospital visits and parent-teacher conferences, while I'd been trying to hold our family together, he'd been crafting this elaborate lie. "He talks about you," Marissa said softly. "About how guilty he feels, how confused he is. I think he still loves." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. I jerked away, but not before noticing her hands were shaking too. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she said. "I thought." "You thought what? That you'd found someone special? That you were different?" I stood up, gathering the photos. "He's not confused, Marissa. He's a liar. And you're not special. You're just convenient." As I turned to leave, she called after me. "What are you going to do?" I paused, thinking of Iris's dark scribbles, of Mom's failing health, of all the nights I'd spent waiting for Ethan to come home. "I'm going to show him what complicated really looks like." The cafe door chimed behind me as I stepped into the afternoon sun, my mind already racing with possibilities. 6 months of lies. Now it was my turn to start telling some truths. The hospital bills spread across my kitchen table like a paper maze at midnight. each one stamped with red warnings. Past due. I'd been putting this off for weeks, but after meeting Marissa, reality couldn't wait anymore. My phone lit up with a text from Ben. Still up? Drowning in paperwork, I replied. And reality. 3 disappeared then. Come outside. He was parked at the curb, 2 coffee cups on his dashboard. I slipped into his car, grateful for the escape from my silent house. Couldn't sleep either, he asked, handing me a cup. Found out today the affair's been going on for 6 months. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. 6 months of lies, while I've been trying to figure out how to pay Mom's medical bills. Ben's grip tightened on his cup. Jesus, Lila. Have you talked to Ethan about the bills? He keeps saying his bonus is coming. That everything will work out. I laughed bitterly. Now I know where the money's really going. Fancy hotels, secret dates. You could fight this, Ben said quietly. Get a lawyer. Take him for everything. With what money? I pulled out one of the hospital bills. Mom's care alone is eating everything we have. And Iris. My voice cracked. I can't put her through a messy divorce. So, you're just going to let him get away with it? The question hung in the air between us. Through the windshield, I could see my daughter's bedroom window, dark and quiet. Iris had stopped asking where her dad was at dinner time. The nursing home called again today, I said. They're talking about moving Mom to a cheaper facility. One with fewer services, less supervision. Lila. Ben turned to face me. You don't have to carry all this alone. Something in his voice made me look at him. Really look at him. In the dim streetlight, I saw what I'd been avoiding for months. The way he watched me, the unspoken offer in his eyes. I should go back inside, I said, reaching for the door handle. Wait. His hand caught mine. There's an opening in my department. Better pay, better hours. I could put in a word. Don't. I pulled away. Please don't make this more complicated than it already is. What's complicated about wanting to help someone new? He stopped himself, but the unfinished sentence hung between us like smoke. My phone buzzed. Ethan, missing you. Home soon. The lie was so casual, so practiced, like the hundreds of other lies that had built this house of cards I was living in. And suddenly, sitting in Ben's car with unpaid bills in my lap and my husband's mistress's words echoing in my head, I knew what I had to do. I need to go, I said, opening the door. But thank you. For the coffee. For everything. Back inside, I gathered the bills into a neat stack. Then I opened my laptop and typed, Divorce lawyers, free consultation. Sometimes the most difficult decisions aren't about what you choose to do, but what you choose to stop doing. Like pretending. Like waiting. Like hoping things will magically get better on their own. Ethan's proposal came during dinner, served between bites of takeout Chinese that had long gone cold. We should move into your mom's house. I nearly choked on my lo mein. What? Think about it, he said, leaning forward with that familiar sales pitch enthusiasm. The nursing home bills are killing us. We could care for her ourselves, save money, give Iris more space. Iris, who'd been pushing her food around her plate, looked up sharply. What about my school? My friends? It's only 20 minutes away, sweetheart, Ethan assured her. And the schools, they're better. I watched him spin this perfect solution, this neat answer to all our problems. Just like he'd probably spun stories to Marissa about our failing marriage. The house needs work, I said. A lot of work. I'll handle it. We can start this weekend. He reached across the table, taking my hand. It's the right move, Lila. For all of us. His touch made my skin crawl, but I didn't pull away. Instead, I thought about the divorce lawyer's website still open on my laptop upstairs. About Ben's job offer. About 6 months of lies. Mom, Iris's voice was small. Can I be excused? After she left, Ethan squeezed my hand. She'll adjust. Kids are resilient. Like they adjust to their father working late every night? The words slipped out before I could stop them. His face tightened. I'm trying here, Lila. I'm offering a solution. To which problem exactly? I pulled my hand away. The medical bills? Our marriage? Your guilt. What's that supposed to mean? The front door opened before I could respond. Nurse Carla, who'd been watching Mom for the evening, appeared in the kitchen doorway. Her expression made my heart stop. "Your mother had another episode," she said softly. "The nursing home called. They want to move her to intensive care tomorrow." Ethan was already pulling out his phone, probably calculating costs. "See? This is exactly why we need to move. We can't afford." "Stop." My voice cracked like a whip. "Just stop pretending you care about my mother." "Of course I care. I'm trying to keep this family together." "By sleeping with Marissa?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Carla quietly disappeared, leaving us in the wreckage of my outburst. Ethan's face went through a series of emotions: shock, guilt, anger, before settling on something worse: pity. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to know you're not trying to save this family. You're trying to save yourself." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. "It's not that simple." "Actually, it is." I stood up, gathering the untouched plates. "You want to move into Mom's house? Fine. But not because you want to take care of her. You want to keep me trapped, dependent, while you play house with your girlfriend on the side." "Lila." "The answer is no." I dropped the plates in the sink with a crash that made us both jump. "Figure out another way to ease your conscience." As I walked away, I heard him call after me. "What about Mom's care? The bills? What's your solution?" I paused at the stairs, thinking of the job offer from Ben, the divorce lawyer's website, all the choices I'd been too afraid to make. Maybe it's time I stopped looking for solutions and started looking for exits. The text from Marissa arrived at 3 a.m. "We need to talk. It's about Ethan. And the money." I met her at an all-night diner, the kind where nobody asks questions. She looked different than our last encounter, haunted, nervous. Her hands shook as she pulled out a stack of papers. "I found these in his laptop bag," she said, sliding them across the sticky table. "I think you should see them. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan applications, all in my mother's name, with her forged signature. The dates aligned perfectly with his affair: 6 months of systematic theft, hidden behind concern for my mother's care. "He told me the money was from his savings," Marissa whispered. "For our fresh start." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps. My coffee turned to acid in my stomach. "There's more," she continued. "He's planning to move her to a cheaper facility, one with questionable practices. The paperwork's already started." A memory flashed. Mom's face when I'd visited yesterday, her eyes trying to tell me something I couldn't understand. Had she known? Had she been trying to warn me? My phone lit up. "Ethan, where are you?" Iris is asking. "He doesn't know you're here," I said to Marissa. It wasn't a question. She shook her head. "I ended it last week. He didn't take it well." Another text. "Coming home soon? We need to talk about Mom's move." The diner's bell chimed. We both jumped, but it was just a tired-looking truck driver seeking coffee. "I should go." Marissa stood, gathering her coat. "I'm sorry, Lila. For everything. But mostly for not telling you sooner." Back home, I found Ethan waiting in the kitchen. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked casually, like we were still normal people living normal lives. I placed the papers on the counter between us. "Want to explain why you're stealing from my mother?" His face didn't change, and somehow that was worse than any reaction I'd imagined. "I was going to tell you. Once everything was settled." "Settled?" My laugh sounded hysterical even to me. "You mean once you'd moved her somewhere cheap enough to die quietly while you ran off with your girlfriend?" "Ex-girlfriend," he corrected, as if that mattered. "And I did it for us, Lila. For our future." "Mom." Iris's voice from the doorway made us both freeze. She stood there in her pajamas, clutching her phone. "Is that why Grandma's been trying to text me?" I grabbed her phone, my hands shaking. There they were, desperate, garbled messages from my mother's ancient flip phone. The one we thought she couldn't use anymore. Fragments of words, warnings about Ethan, about money, about danger. "I had to delete them," Iris whispered. "Dad said Grandma was confused. That it would upset you." The room tilted sideways. All this time, my mother had been trying to protect me, while I'd failed to protect her. Ethan stepped toward us. Lila, please. Let me explain. Don't. I pulled Iris close, feeling her trembling. Just don't move. I'm calling the police. His face hardened. Think carefully about that. Who do you think they'll believe? The respected businessman trying to help his family, or the stressed-out wife with a sick mother making wild accusations? And there it was, the final twist of the knife. He'd planned for this too. Had probably been planning it all along. The nursing home's parking lot was empty except for Ethan's car and mine. It was past visiting hours, but Nurse Carla had let me in with one look at my face. Now I stood in my mother's doorway, watching Ethan rifle through her bedside drawer. Looking for something? My voice made him jump. Lila. He straightened, trying to hide the papers in his hand. I was just checking on her power of attorney documents. I stepped into the room. The ones you forged? Mom stirred in her sleep, machines beeping steadily around her. Ethan's eyes darted between her and the door where I stood blocking his exit. You don't understand, he said, lowering his voice. This was temporary. Once I got things sorted. You mean once you'd cleaned out her accounts? I moved closer, feeling strangely calm. Or after you'd moved her somewhere cheaper to die? His face hardened. Everything I did was for our family.
No.
I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen. Everything you did was for yourself. And I have proof. The recording started playing, his conversation with a sketchy nursing home administrator discussing kickbacks for patient transfers. Marissa had helped me get it, her final act of redemption. You really think anyone will believe? The police already do. I cut him off. They're on their way, along with the bank fraud investigators. He lunged forward suddenly, grabbing my phone. We struggled, and I felt something inside me snap, not with fear, but with rage. Years of manipulation, lies, and theft fueled my strength as I twisted away, sending him stumbling into the medical equipment. The crash woke Mom. Her eyes flew open, focusing on us with startling clarity. Her hand reached for the nurse call button. Don't, Ethan warned, but it was too late. The hallway erupted with activity, nurses, security, and behind them, the police officers I'd called earlier. Ethan's face crumpled as he realized he was surrounded. You could have just left, I said quietly. Instead, you tried to steal from a sick woman. My mother. I never meant, he started, but I held up my hand. Save it for your lawyer. I moved to Mom's bedside as the officers approached. Oh, and Ethan? Iris knows everything. Those texts from Mom she showed you? She kept copies. Our daughter's smarter than both of us. They led him away in handcuffs, past Iris who stood in the doorway with Ben. She'd insisted on coming, on seeing the truth for herself. Mom, her voice wavered. Is it over? I looked at my mother, who reached for my hand with trembling fingers. At Ben, who'd helped me gather evidence and protect my family. At my daughter, standing tall despite her tears. Almost, I said. We have to rebuild now, but we'll do it together. Mom squeezed my hand, and I saw in her eyes what she'd been trying to tell me all along. That strength isn't about enduring abuse or protecting lies. Sometimes it's about burning everything down to save what matters most. Let's go home, I told Iris, gathering our belongings. Not to the house Ethan and I had shared, but to my mother's house, the home that had been waiting for us all along. 5 years passed like turning pages in a well-worn book. Mom's garden, once neglected, now bloomed with life. I stood among her roses, deadheading spent blooms when Iris came running from the house, waving an envelope. Mom, it's from Dad. My hands stilled on the thorny stems. Ethan had been released 3 months ago, after serving time for financial fraud. We hadn't heard from him since the trial. He's been writing to me, Iris continued, now 17 and carrying herself with a quiet confidence I envied at her age. For the past year. The secrecy should have hurt, but somehow it didn't. What does he say? That he's sorry. That he's changed. She hesitated. That he'd like to see us if we're willing. Through the kitchen window, I could see Ben preparing dinner, his presence in our lives as natural now as breathing. Not a replacement for what was lost, but something new, something chosen. There's more. Iris pulled out another paper. Remember those hospital bills? He's been paying them off, anonymously through his lawyer, for the past 3 years. I thought of Mom, now recovered enough to sit in her garden room, painting watercolors with trembling but determined hands. The medical bills that had once threatened to drown us had mysteriously decreased, giving us room to breathe, to heal, to grow. He's working as an accountant for a nonprofit, Iris said softly, helping families navigate medical debt. The irony, right? A memory surfaced, Ethan in handcuffs, looking back at me in that hospital corridor. I'd seen something in his eyes then, not just regret, but recognition. Of what he'd become, of what he'd lost. Do you want to see him? I asked Iris. I think I do. She squared her shoulders. But only if you're okay with it. The roses needed pruning, their growth wild and tangled. Like life, I thought. You couldn't control which way it grew, only how you tended it. I have something to show you first, I said, leading her to the garden shed. Inside, in a dusty box, lay the manila envelope that had started everything. The photos, the bank statements, the evidence of betrayal. Why did you keep these? Iris asked. To remind myself that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best ones. I picked at the envelope. But maybe we don't need them anymore. Together, we walked to the fire pit where Ben was starting the evening's flames. Without ceremony, I dropped the envelope into the fire. 5 years of anger and hurt curled into ash, rising on the evening breeze. Tell your father, I said, watching the flames, that we can meet him for coffee. Neutral ground. Iris hugged me, and over her shoulder, I saw Mom watching from her window, smiling that knowing smile that had once tried to warn me of danger and now spoke of peace. The garden needed work. The roses needed pruning. Life needed tending. But for the first time in 5 years, I felt truly ready to see what might grow from the ashes of what we'd burned away. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone else. Sometimes it's about rebuilding yourself so completely that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant to your happiness. But sometimes, just sometimes, they find their way back, not to what was lost, but to something new and unexpected, growing wild and free in the garden of second chances.